It is finishing up the 8th day of the month of Chodesh Elul, and we have the schus of learning Daf Chaf Gimel Amud Aleph in Maseches Pesachim. We are in the midst of the second parak, still discussing the opinion, primarily discussing the opinion of Rabbi Abahu. Rabbi Abahu told us that all things that are aser be'achila are also aser be'hana'ah. And then we have challenged Rabbi Abahu from half dozen, pretty much different brises and Marmagamis, and the Gemara has still maintained Rabbi Abahu's opinion, answering for each of these things. And the Gemara is continuing at the top of Daf Chav Gimel Amud Aleph from the discussion that we had about Orla on Daf Chav Beis Amud Beis. Says the Gemara at the bottom of Chav Beis Amud Beis that there is a machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim, what exactly the word lachem teaches you in the pasuk that the Torah discusses Orla. The Gemara says at the beginning of Chav Gimel Aleph that according to the Chacham L'Rabbim, the Tanakama holds that lachem tells you that L'Rabbim, that if a tree is planted in a public area for the public, it's not belonging to a single individual, but it belongs to the public, that is also chayiv in Orla. And Rabbi Yehuda Omer Lahotzias and Abdul Rabbim that the word lachem teaches you exactly the opposite, that it is pater, that it's exempt from the mitzvahs of Orla. Says the Gemara, my time in the Tanakama, what's the rationale of the Tanakama that says that you are chayiv in Orla if it's in a public place? The pasuk says untatem. Pasuk says untatem, you will plant it. Leyachid mashma. That tells you untatem, you will plant it. You, each individual. That teaches you the din of Orla belonging to a yachid. L'Rabbim loy mashma. The Torah does not imply that that is also true of something that belongs to the public. But when the Torah comes along and tells you lachem for you in plural, the havius and Rabbin, that also includes something that is planted for the public. Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that holds exactly the opposite. Untatem, the pasuk untatem, which is also in the plural, mashma bein l'Rabbin bein l'yachid, teaches me, and you will plant it. You publicly, plural, you will plant. That's the obligation, the isra of Orla. Bein l'Rabbim bein l'yachid, both for public and private. V'lachem. So what does lachem later on in the pasuk teach you? Bein yachid bein rabbim mashma. That also teaches me public and private. Have a riboy achar riboy. That would be a riboy achar riboy, a inclusion after inclusion. Ve'ein riboy achar riboy elam lema'et. And a riboy after a riboy, that is called the miyot. Meaning, if I say you in plural and you in plural, so why do I need both of those things? It must be that there is something that's being that is being excluded, and that is to effectively to double down on the you being not for public usage. Public usage is pater. Says the Gemara, okay, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim, and so far Rabbi Abahu is still safe. Rabbi Abahu, we have still been able to explain each and every one of these isurim of Isra Achila, how Rabbi Abahu explains that it's also an Isra Hana, and if it's not an Isra Hana, that there's a pasuk that tells you the exclusion. The Gemara continues to challenge Rabbi Abahu. V'harei truma, what about truma? Truma is also for a kohen, is mutar for a kohen, and it is also for everybody else. Says the pasuk, the Rahman of the Torah tells you v'chol zar lo yachol kodesh, that there is an Isra Achila for a non-kohen. Non-kohen, me, Blumenthal is not allowed to eat truma. I'm not a kohen. But and nevertheless, the Mishnah teaches us ma'arvin lanazir beyayin, that you can make an eruv. If we're making an eruv tchumen, trying to connect areas, you build an eruv, and then you make an eruv, meaning that you join these different chatzeres, these different domains, these different courtyards, with a joint meal. So, what does that joint meal going to consist of? So, like we know by eruv tavshilin, from a yontav that goes into a Shabbos, you need to have a cooked food, you need to have a baked food. So in order to make an eruv, you need to have food that is going to be shared. Says the Mishnah, ma'arvin l'nazir b'yayin, you can make an eruv that in this domain there is a nazir, somebody that has sworn off from drinking wine, but you can still make an eruv with the wine. And you can make an eruv even though there's Yishol there, even though there's Truma. What does that sound like? It sounds like he's not allowed to eat these things, but he can absolutely get benefit from it. The benefit is called the Eruv. Amar of Papa says, no, Shani Hasam, there it is different. The Amar Kra, with regards to Truma, the Pasuk tells you, Trumaschem. Pasuk says, to remove Trumaschem, you have to separate your Truma. Whose Truma? The Truma of everybody. Shelachem Teheh, there is clearly a permissibility in it being for you, for the entirety of the Jewish people. Everybody is shaykh in some way, shape, and form to this idea of Truma. It must be that Trumaschem is including the fact that Yisrael is allowed to get benefit from it. So it's Gzeras HaKosov. Ve'idach, and according to Chizkiah, who holds that all things that are asa ba'achila are not asa b'hana, why does he need the pasuk to tell you Trumaschem? Says the Gemara, Trumaschem, the Chol Yisrael Kamer. No, Trumaschem is just said in the public. It just means everybody that's taking Truma. It doesn't mean that you have any rights to it. Who says that the word Trumaschem is going to teach you specifically a din of usage and getting benefit? Ve'harei Nazir, what about Nazir, the Rachmana Amud, that the Torah tells you? We explain Truma, but the Mishnah also says you can an eruv for a Nazir with Yain. The Torah says, Mechar Sanim va'ad Zag, from the seeds to the skin, all of the parts of the grape, the Nazir is not allowed to eat. Lo yoichel, he's not allowed to eat it. Utnan, and we learned in the Mishnah, that you can make an eruv for the Nazir even with one, even though there's an Isra Achila. Amar Marazutra says Marazutra Shani Hasam, there it's different. The Amar Kra, because there the pasuk says now the Gzeras HaKosov Nizrai Kol Yemei Nizra, all the days of his Nazirhood. Shaloi Yehei means that it's his, meaning there's something called Nizrai. It's only pertaining to that which he's only also from the Achila, but he still maintains a level of enjoyment and ownership over those things that it is also for him to eat and drink, because Nizrai, his being a Nazir, still belongs to him. Says the Gemara of Ashi Amar, of Ashi gives a different interpretation than Masutra. The pasuk says Kadosh Yihiyeh, he will be Kadosh. Gadel Pera Sa'ar Rosha, that he's going to grow out the hair of his head. Gidulai Kadosh ve'in davar achar Kadosh, the hair that he grows has a din of kedusha, means isur. It is completely asur. That hair is asur. But the other things that he's not allowed to eat or not allowed to drink, those things don't have an additional isur of hana. So kadosh yeh gadol para, only his hair has this isur of kedusha. Says the Gemara, hold up a second. Who says that nothing else? Meaning the pasuk says kadosh yeh gadol para. Doesn't say, and that's the only thing that has an Isser. Says the Gemara, yeah, okay, fine. So Rav Ashi is rejected. It must be like Mazutra had said before, that we don't learn from the word Nizrai. We learn from Nizrai, we don't learn from Kadosh Iya. Says the Gemara, okay, another rejection or potential challenge for Rabbi Abau. Says the Gemara, Ve'harei Chadash. What about Chadash? The Rachmana Amud, the Torah tells us Lechem v'kali v'karmel lo yiseichlu, that bread and kali, which is toasted grains, v'karmel and fresh ears of wheat, lo yiseichlu, you have an issue of eating that. Ad etzem hayom hazeh, until the second day of Pesach. Ad etzem hayom hazeh utnan, and we learn in the Mishnah. You are allowed to cut the chadash and feed that to your animal. Meaning you're not allowed to eat it, but your animal is allowed to eat it. That's what the Mishnah says. Amar of Shmaya says, Shmaya Shani Hasan, that's different. The Amar Kra, the pasuk says, Kitzirchem shalachem yehei. That it says that you are allowed to, that you'll be cutting Kitzirchem, your Kitzir, your harvest. Kitzirchem means it belongs to you. Shalachem yehei. It's going to belong to you, meaning you are not allowed to eat it, but you are allowed to benefit from it. Another Gzeras HaKosov. Ve'idach and Chizkiah, that holds that there's no Isra Ana. So Kitzirchem and the Chol Yisrael Mashma. So how's he going to explain Kitzirchem when it says your harvest? The Chol Yisrael Mashma, it just means in general, it belongs to the Jewish people. It doesn't tell you a din of ownership, a din of Hana. It simply is telling you that you are going to be cutting your grain. That's just the way the Torah speaks. Another challenge to Rabbi Abau. V'harei shiratzim. What about shiratzim? Creepy crawlies. Sheretz is one of the 8 things that the Torah says a dead one of these things is going to cause is an avatuma. The Rahman Amud, the Torah tells you, Sheket hu lo yachel. It is disgusting, and you are not allowed to eat it. Utanan, and we learned in the Mishnah, Tzayodei chayv ofis v'dagim. If you have hunters of chaya, which is a non-domesticated animal, va'ofis, and birds, v'dagim, and fish, sheniz down on him at minim tamim, who happen to come across a min tame, a non-kosher species, meaning tame, meaning that it's not one of the things that is permissible to eat. Mutarim lemachal nachrim. You're allowed to sell it to a nachri. So if you're fishing and you pull up a shark. So what do you do with that shark? You can't cut it up and put it with the tuna. Tuna is kosher, and the shark is not kosher. You're allowed to sell it to the nachri. That's mutter. So shratzim, with regards to shratzim and all the other things that are asur, the Torah says you're not allowed to eat it, and the Mishnah says, okay, fine, you're not allowed to eat it, but you can sell it to a nachri. Says the Gemara, it seems to be a dead giveaway that even though this is Isra Achila, there's a heter of hana. Says the Gemara, answering for Rabbi Abba, Shani Hasan, that's different. Da'amakra lachem, meaning shalachem yehe, it's going to be yours. Sheketz hu lachem, it's going to be disgusting, lachem, but it's still yours. You can still use it. Why do you need the word lachem? You could just have said sheketz. Shalachem yehe teaches you that you still get benefit from it. If that's so, so then the Mishnah that told us that that if you have hunters that are hunting a chaya, that are catching birds, that are trapping birds and catching fish, that happen to find something that's tameh. So what do you mean happen to find? Just say that you're allowed to go out and hunt for these things. Why not? Go ahead and hunt for them. The Mishnah implies not. Shani hacha, that's different. The pasuk says, sheket hu lochem. Says the pasuk, sheket yu lochem. It will be not sheket hu lochem, but sheket yu lochem. It will be disgusting for you. The word yihiyu tells you to have a son yihu, that as they are, meaning they are also to you as they are. What does it mean that they're going to be also to you as they are? Meaning that you're not allowed to go out and hunt for these things. You shouldn't be looking for them. But if you find them, it would be mutter. The Tosfos here discusses what exactly this din is, at least according to Rabbi Abba, which it seems to be done passing like. Tosfos here says, Amakra, you behav yasan you, they should be as they are. It says, V'im taimar, imkain susim v'chamar, zavnina. Says, how could you ever have a Jew that sells horses and donkeys? How can you? I mean, you're not allowed to eat them. So how can you trade in those things? So the Tosfos answers, no. That's bedavka about eating. Meaning, if you are, working for whoever, McDonald's, they put horses. I don't know. They put they put horses into the burgers. So that would be awesome. But to sell a horse to ride, that's not considered in the din of sheketzu because that's not being hunted for food. Okay. And according to Chizkiah, why does it say it should not be eaten? It should not be eaten. What should it say? It should say lo yochel. And this is going back to what we said 2 days ago, that the pasuk should not be saying lo yochel. It should not be eaten. Say lo yochel. Do not eat. Umaisi lachem, and then you would need the word lachem lemishe in order to teach you that it's mutter. Why do you need it to say yachel? Why do you need it to say lachem? Just say lo, and then you don't need any of these things. Who holds that every Isra Achila does not contain the Isra Na. So why does the Torah speak like this? Chizkiah explains as follows. No. I also hold from here. My rationale is from here as well. I'm learning my din from this pasuk of Lo Yachel and Lachem. Vari Chametz the Rachmana Amar, with regards to Chametz, which is what we're talking about, yeah? The Rachmana Amar, the pasuk tells you, Lo Yachel Chametz. Chametz should not be eaten. V'tanya, and we learned Rabbi Yossi Aglili tells us, Tamal Atzmecha, you should be astounded at yourself. Chametz Asvana. How could you ever have an Isra no by Chametz? Call Shiva for all 7 days. Shani Hastam, it's different there. The Amar the pasuk says lo yira elecha sa'ar, that you are not allowed to have sa'ar, yeast, seen by you. Shelcha yehei, meaning lo yira lecha sa'ar, that it should not be seen lecha. Lecha means shelchahi, that it still belongs to you. V'Rabbanan, and according to the Rabbanan that disagree with Rabbi Yossi Glili, how do they understand the word shelcha? V'Rabbanan shelcha I ataraya. Yours, you are not allowed to see. You are allowed to see, meaning have in your possession that which belongs to somebody else and that which belongs to the mizbech, to the Beis Hamikdash. Ve'idach, and from Rabbi Yossi Glili, how does he know that din? So he says, the word lecha is said twice in the pasuk. It says lo yira'eh lecha, se'ar v'lo yira'eh lecha chametz. It says lecha twice in the pasuk. Ve'idach, and according to the Rabbanan, chad benachri shekivashta v'chad benachri shelo kivashta. One is talking about, we saw this limud in the first parak. Chad benachri shekivashta. One is talking about a non-Jew who you have conquered, meaning you have conquered his property, you have conquered his area in Eretz Yisrael, and now he pays taxes. V'chad benachri shelo kivashta. And the other one is talking about a nachri that you have not conquered, he doesn't pay taxes, he is often his son. Meaning, a nachri that is under you, and that's the machlokes, a nachri that's under your control is more pashut, or a nachri that's not under your control is more pashut. Okay, but either which way, you need both of these limudim. V'idach, and according to Rabbi Yossi Glili, how does he know these two dinim? So he says, there's not two lechas, there's three lechas. V'idach, because Pasuk says in Sefer Dvarim as well, that also says in Sefer Dvarim there's a third lecha. And according to the Rabbanan, what do they do with that? You need one to teach you the din by sa'ar, by yeast, and one to teach you that the same din is true by chametz. And you need both of these dinim. You need to teach me both the isur of bal yirah, bal yimatzeh, by sa'ar and by chametz. It says it's tricky, and you need it. You need both of these things. Why do you need both of these things? So Rashi here says the ikas of sa'ar, if it only would have written sa'ar, mishum dechimus kasha, because the chametz it's very potent. The chametz is potent. Aval chametz ema mutar, but maybe you would say that it's permissible to own chametz because it's not super leavened. V'i because of chametz, and if the Torah would only have told you the din of chametz, mishum deray la'achila, because chametz is edible, but yeast is not yet edible. Aval sa'ar delay matzi, delay asel michle. Sa'ar you're not going to eat. Nobody eats yeast. It's disgusting. Ema loy overale. You would say maybe you haven't transgressed the prohibition. It says the Gemara Hachim Mefarish Lo Berakam the Beitza, and this is how we explain in the first parak of Maseches Beitza. And Pesachim we will continue with the next question of the Gemara tomorrow morning, back at 6:15. Pesachim getting back to our regular scheduled programming. Everybody should have a wonderful evening. Pesachim Looking forward to continuing that.